Hello everyone and welcome to Module 1 lesson. We're going to be talking about critical thinking. Now we have 6 questions to go through today, and for the first one we're going to start with placing the given digits into the blue circles that we have on here. Now the numbers that are given, we have to figure out which three vertically and horizontal are going to equal to 31. So for me, I went with the smallest number for the middle just to start by plugging something in. I did this because I thought, well, there's 3 numbers, and so a smaller number would probably help kind of even things out. So by doing that, I realized that I put the 8 in, so I did 31 minus 8, and then just figured out which 2 numbers would equal that. And so by doing that, I ended up with 10 plus 8 plus 13 is 31, and then 12 plus 8 plus 11 is 31. Now, you can rearrange them some more. It asks us to see what all possible combinations there are. The only ones that I found to be possible were the ones given that we just did. You can rotate them around the number 8, but there's no other way to add them. Our next question is to look at the diagram given with the square with the 4 circles in it, and it shows us how to read the diagram. So it says 2 plus 8 is 10. So we are going to take 2 of the circles and add them together to make the number in the middle. So if we follow that and go down here to the first one, then we're going to do 7 plus what number is 15? Well, if you subtract 7 from 15, you are going to get the number 8. So you would fill in the number 8 there. So then you can go around, continue going around. So then 8 plus what number is 20? You would get 12, and then 12 plus what number is 17? And you're going to get 5, which would also be 5 plus 7 is 12. So then we're going to go ahead and do that for the second one as well. So what number plus 6 is equal to 13? And you get 7. And then 7 plus what number is 11? You get 4. And then 4 plus what number is 19? And you'll get 15, which then you can check by 15 plus 6 does equal 21. And then this third one, we're going to do 3 plus what is 8? 5. And then 5 plus what is 15? 10. But then 10 plus what is 12? And it would have to be 2. But 2 plus 3 does not equal 6. Therefore, this diagram does not work. So we'll just mark that one out and go on to the fourth one. So the fourth one will continue. 8 plus what is 18? 8 plus 10 is 18. And then 10 plus what is 16? And you get 6. 6 plus what is 7? And you'll get 1, which then 1 plus 8 will be 9. So moving on to question 2. So it gives us the ones that I have here in the light blue. And it says, sketch all possible figures and calculate the perimeter of each figure. Which figure has the least perimeter and which has the greatest? So we'll start out by noting that it also told us, not up there, but it told us that each of these sides is worth 1. So whenever we do the perimeter of something, you add up all the sides and whatever the equal amount is the perimeter. So first it says to find all the possible figures, and they each have to be touching, one side has to be touching for each one. And so I've come up with these 3 other figures to the left side. And then for the perimeter, we're going to count around each of the blocks to see how many. So for the square shaped one, if you count each one of those sides, it equals to 12. And then for the next one is 14. And then down below it, add up all the sides and you get 20. And then for the two figures that they gave us, we got 18 and 16. Now out of all of those, the square has the smallest perimeter, so it has the least. And then the greatest number is the one that we have on the bottom here that equals 20. So for question 3, and there is quite a few parts for this one, so this will be part A and part B. It gives us this top dot sequence, which has triangular and square dot sequences, and kind of shows you how that lines up. So by using that, and then it gave us these first couple on the bottom here, and it says to draw the next two figures, which you can see I've done here in the blue and then the red. I did this by looking at what they gave us and realizing that triangular numbers were triangles, squares were squares. So these are pentagons. And so we are going to draw those out. And so I counted kind of how it was happening. So for each one that you move up, so for the first one, it has the one dot, and it shows us that the next one will go to the next spot. And so for the next one, it shows 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2 for each side. So if we have 2 for each side there, then it's going to be 5. And then on to the next one, we have 1, 2, 3 on each side. So for each number, 1, 2, and 3, it's going to have that many dots. So for every number you go up a dot as well. So in order to do the next two, I did 5 and 6. So I just did 5 dots for each side, just as, and then 6 dots for each side. So then part B says to list the sequence of numbers that correspond to the sequence. So just like it showed us up at the top that we had 1 dot, 3 dots, 6 dots, it's just counting how many dots you have. So then I went back and just counted how many dots were in each sequence. And those are what are down below. So for part C, it says to add 4 more equations to the list on the right. Okay, so it gave us these list of addition equations right here where it says 1 equals 1, 1 plus 4 is 5, and so on. So it wants us to create the next 4 of those. So in order to do that, you need to look for the pattern that they're using to figure out how you are going to continue to do that. So by doing that, I decided to look at 1 was like our thing. So what happened between 1 and then the number 4? So you add 3 to the number 1 to get 4. And then for the second part there, from 4 to 7, you also add 3. So for each number that you move up, you're going to add 3 to the previous number. So 3 plus 7 was then 10. So in order to do the next equation, it would be 10 plus 3, which is 13. And then 13 plus 3, which is 16. 16 plus 3, which is 19. And then 19 plus 3, which was 21. And that gave me all 4 of those equations. Then for part D, it says compute the 10th term in the arithmetic progression. So we've already got to 8. So you just need to do 2 more numbers. So we ended on 21, which was the 8th one. So for the 9th one, we're going to add 3, which was 24. And then for the 10th one, we would add 3 more, which was 27. Then you add all that up to get the 142. So for question number 4, we have 4, well, they gave us one pyramid to show us how it works, the one that is completely filled out. And then we have A, B, and C that they want us to figure out. So they show us on this example that if we were to just start at the bottom here, you add the two columns or the two blocks that are next to each other to get the one on top. So this 3 plus this 5 equals 8. And the 5 plus the 4 is 9. And then the 8 and 9 equals 17. So we're going to use this pyramid in order to complete this first one. So for A, we're trying to find X in this bottom left corner. So we want to know, oh goodness, what has happened? Technical difficulties. Okay, so for this first one, we noticed that 7 plus 3 would give us that empty block above, which would be 10. So then we also know that X plus, or we need to know, X plus 7 is to equal this other blank. So I just put Y so that I would have a number, like a variable there in order to continue. So for, sorry, I'm not sure what I did here to make it do this. Okay, so back to this again. So I did X plus 7 is Y, and then we know the Y plus that 10 is going to equal 25. Well, if you, what number plus 10 is 25, you get 15. So then now you can go back and say, what number plus 7 is 15, and you get 8. So that one was fairly simple, kind of what we've already been doing. And then for B and C, it's a little more complicated. You have to actually go in here for B, and we're going to do 1 plus Y would give us, I just put X, and then Y plus 2 would give us, I put Z. And then we're thinking that X and Z are equal to 15. So we know that we said our X was 1 plus Y, and our Z was 2 plus Y. And we know that those are both going to equal to 15. So I chose to just plug in numbers to kind of see what would happen. And so I started with the number 5. And so I did 5 plus 1 was 6. 5 plus 2 was 7. 6 plus 7 is 13. So I was like, okay, that's too small. Let's move up a number. So then I did 6. And when you plug 6 in, it does equal to 15. So then you know what your number is. So then for C, we're going to do the same sort of thing. I plugged in, we're trying to find Z though, which is a little different than the bottom. We moved up a spot. So we're going to go through and fill in those two blanks with an X and a Y. And then we get down here to 2 plus X plus 9 plus X equals 27. So again, I just plugged in numbers, and I ended up finding out that X was equal to 8. So by doing that, I could figure out Z by X being 8 plus 2, which would give me 10. It's a lot of just plugging in numbers and figuring out what comes with it. Now, this next one is my favorite. When I was a kid, these were the ones that I always loved. I had a whole book of them. So we're going to use this chart down here that we've made, and we're going to use this box full of clues to figure out which man and wife are married. So we have all the men down, the ones down the left side, and then we have all the women's names at the top. Now, in order to do this, if you know that the match is not those two people, then you just put the X. And then once you found one and you put a check mark, you can then exit out the row and the column following that. So for the first one, it says Floyd is Josie's brother. Well, if Floyd is Josie's brother, then we know that Floyd is not her husband, so we can put an X where Floyd and Josie meet. Then we have Josie and Gus dated some, but then Gus met his present wife. So now we can go to Josie and Gus and say that they're not married. Next, we have Kitty is married to Will. So that one they gave to us. So if we check mark on that one, then we can now go under Kitty and put X's on the other 3. And then on Will, put an X on the other 3. Now that shows us under the Josie column, 3 X's and a blank spot. So now we automatically know that Josie is married to David. So now we can put those X's in on Josie and on David. So then we also know that, sorry, I lost my train of thought. So then that's Josie and then that's David. And so then we're going to use these next 2 clues to find out that Sarah and Gus are married and that Annie and Floyd are married. Fun little words. All right, so for this last question, there's going to be 4 or 5 steps, I believe. And so for the first 2, it says create a dot pattern representation of a trapezoidal numbers. So before we saw the triangle, the square, we did the pentagon, and now we're going to do trapezoids. So it gives us kind of what it needs to go by. So for the first one, it is 1 + 1 + 1. So I just put 3 dots in a row. And then for the second one, it says 1, and then it says 2, 2, 2, 1, which with the way that I drew them out, it kind of makes a trapezoid. And so then for the third one, we get to really see what it looks like. And it's 1, 2, and then 3, 3, 3, 2, 1. Now, those middle 3 are going to equal up to whichever number you're on at the time. So if we were to do 4 next, it would do 1, and then 2, and then it would be 4, 4, 4, 2, 1. That's the sequence that it follows. So we showed that. And now we're going to go on to part B, and it shows us that 1 + 1 + 1, like we did in the first one, also equals 1 × 3. So then if we go on to 1 + 2, 2, 2, 1 that we had before is also equal to 2 × 4. So now we're making rectangles out of it. So it says in part B, to show how the dots in representation of trapezoidal number can be rearranged into a rectangle with 2 more columns than rows. So we're just going to take those end pieces off of our trapezoids and move them up to make these rectangles. So for 2, we already did the 2 × 4. And then for the third one, it's going to be a 3 × 5 and make that way. And there we have it. So if y'all have any questions, now would be a great time. Otherwise, thank you.